Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by DraftKings. I'm your host, Evan Abrams, and I'm joined by Brandon Anderson for our NFL recap show. We will discuss everything we saw today and look ahead briefly to Monday Night Football, which is absolutely goddamn incredible this week. Eagles, Packers, going to be fantastic. We'll also get Brandon's hot read for next week. So get an early line, get a jump on week 11. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to give you my stat of the day. Now, this is just so cool because it's kind of based off of the results of today, because without today, the stat doesn't come true. But next week's game, it's funny that I'm kind of bringing up something to look forward to next week when we have this Monday Night Football game on tap. But Seattle and the Rams next week has set up to be actually an amazing game we haven't seen in a long time. So the Rams, last time I looked, -2.5, 48.5. But both teams 7-2 against the spread and 7-2 straight up going into this game. Both at over 77%. Now, both teams on 4 games straight up in ATS win streaks. So hot as can be, great records, great cover records, and the ATS best in the NFL for both teams. So really could not be hotter and could not be a better matchup. Now, going back in game 10 or later, I couldn't find another matchup of two teams 77% straight up plus 77% plus ATS. So on both sides facing each other since the Super Bowl in 1983, Dolphins and Commanders, Redskins, Washington, whatever you want to make it. Don Shula, Joe Gibbs. Last time, game 10 or later, 77% straight up, 77% against the spread. That game on deck for next week with the NFC West and everything you want to make it. But pretty awesome to have that matchup kind of on deck. Stat I just found. So I will be looking into that more. It'll be in the primer this week. But Brandon, based off of everything you saw today, and Sunday Night Football is what it is, and we've got an amazing Monday Night Football game, and this one on deck, which I'm now really looking forward to, given the matchups and what Stafford's done and Darnold, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But talk to me about Week 10.
Yeah, that stat's crazy. Super Bowl 1983, that's like a few months before I was born. That's my entire lifetime of it not happening before we get – we keep every week or two, we're like, it's the game of the year. And I know like that's content, like that's the thing that we have to do and say, but it feels like it every time. Like we had Chiefs Bills and we're like, all right, yeah, but next week we got Monday night Packers Eagles. It's the class of the NFC. Well, we wouldn't have had that game. And the new class of the NFC game is a week from now. This game, of course, it's a division game. So we will get, I think actually the Rams Seahawks second game is a Thursday night game in December. So a rare, really important Thursday night game that you'll want to actually like set aside some calendar time for rather than Broncos Raiders like last week. So I'll say this, Broncos Raiders Thursday night turned out to be a pretty good preview of what Sunday was going to feel like. Like we started out with a really fun game. I thought it was probably our best international game of the season this morning. It went to overtime. And then the game slowly got progressively worse. We got a lot of fun, kind of weird comebacks and a couple upsets in the early window. And then like the late window, we had like one quarter in and all the games were done already, basically. And the game tonight, it felt like it never really got going for Pittsburgh. So we will probably today end up talking, I'm guessing, a little bit less about some of the games themselves, a little bit more at times about, okay, what's it mean for Pittsburgh now? What's it mean for the Chargers? What about the Bills? Like we're halfway through the season now. This is the start of the second half. What are we looking at? We're in November. Where do the futures line up? What's the MVP race look like? So I think today kind of sets us up well for some of those conversations.
And let's just get right into it. Sunday Night Football. Chargers win 25-10. They cover -3 at home. Total goes under 45.5. Listen, I don't have a ton on this game. I watched it while kind of prepping for the other games, and every time I looked up, the Steelers weren't doing anything. Rodgers looked pissed at all of his wide receivers. Tomlin looked frustrated with different faces. But, I mean, inside the stats, Rodgers is 15 incompletions, 2 interceptions, like a 50 passer rating. Steelers were dropping balls all over the place, and when they weren't dropping them, they were going into the Chargers' hands. So to me, it just looked like a game that Pittsburgh didn't look on the ball the entire time. Defensively, they played all right. I mean, Vidal played pretty well in terms of the run game for the Chargers, which I was kind of skeptical of when I was handicapping the game myself in terms of the offensive line from the Chargers side, but didn't seem to have too much of an issue. I actually didn't check this. Did Herbert get hit a ton? Did he get sacked a lot? I don't think so, right?
He got hit a few times early. He even was like, I don't think he went into the tent, but they're kind of, taping his ankle. They kept talking early in the first half, like the Steelers making it clear they want to hit him early and often. And so I feel like they were coming after him. I don't know. I thought Pittsburgh's defense honestly was fine in this game. Like they gave up the big McConkey pass late in the game. At that point, I feel like it's probably already done. Like I think it was 18-3 at that point. And it was pretty clear the Steelers were never going to get to 18 points tonight. So that play ended up being somewhat irrelevant. But yeah, they got to him a few times. They got some hits on him. That Chargers line that we talked about, that was a big part of. I was on Steelers in this game, and it did not go well for me here. But the only real note I had about the game is I think all you need to know about this game is the Steelers get a long touchdown drive late in the game to like ostensibly still sort of keep the game alive. And the Chargers are so unbothered that the first play after a long Steelers touchdown drive, they design a pop pass to Keenan Allen so he can set the Chargers all-time franchise record for receptions. That's how unbothered they were by Pittsburgh's offense. And they did the play and all celebrated. And then we're like, oh, right, there's still 3 minutes left. Let's run the clock out. Oh, first down, game over. Like that was the game tonight. That's the recap. Here's my takeaway from the game, Evan. We said big picture. Big picture, right now, there are now 14 teams in the NFL with playoff odds at minus 300 or shorter. 14. Evan, how many teams make the playoffs in the NFL?
You tell me. It's not. I mean, but I think those are I think those odds kind of represent what the pedigree of some of the names on those teams. And I think that's why I think that's why the odds, and I have these as some of the notes going forward with some of these games. That's why I think there's some value in some no's. But I think some people may not agree with me. But continue.
Yeah, well, it's 14. That's the odds are on the dot, basically telling us we've got our field, and there's no world where we've ever had the entire playoff field one Sunday into November. We're so far out, so much can happen. But I think Pittsburgh is a really good example of that. The Steelers are now 5-4. We know that it's like minus $1 billion that they're going to finish above 500 because that's the Tomlin stat. But 5-4 for all the stuff with the Steelers and everything with the Ravens, which we'll get to them. They're only 1 game up now on Baltimore, and they've basically been left for dead. We know that the Ravens odds never really nuked because even at 2-5, they were still co-favorites or favorites to win the division. Well, now they're overwhelming favorites to win the division. Steelers 5-4. They get the Bengals and the Bears. So maybe winnable games. We'll see. No certainty with the Steelers. But then they still play the Bills after that. They still play the Lions. And they play both Baltimore games. So I don't think that they're dead. They could just win those 2 Ravens games and almost nothing else. And they would still probably win the division. And it's Steelers Ravens. They're always going to get one of those games, right? Like we love the rah-rah spot. We love the underdog in those matchups. They'll be the underdog. I don't know. I thought the Chargers were a team to maybe fall out of the picture. Perhaps they still are. But what happened in today's games largely was not just like the upsets that happened. It made it so that the haves and have-nots got even wider. Like the Chargers were a good example of. They were a team I thought maybe would slide a little bit, but this is a really big win for them. They're now in really strong positioning, and the Jaguars lost and the Steelers lost in this game. So it's a head-to-head spot that sets up Chargers against Steelers if they need it later on in like a wild card race. We're just seeing real separation now. So the question is, okay, I agree with you. There's got to be value in some of the no odds. But who is it? Is someone going to fall, or is it just like, well, their quarterback got hurt, and so they ended up losing a few games, and we went from there? It's going to be a tough race to cap and figure out, do you pick the team that's going to lose out? Because if it's just a big injury, that's hard to predict or impossible, really. Maybe you need to pick the team that's going to move in, who's the underdog that's going to make the run and take the spot away. Maybe that's the better angle, but it's it's a strange picture this early in the year to feel that certain.
I think the focus on Pittsburgh, at least for this game, since Chargers, did enough on both sides of the ball where, for at least 10 minutes, you don't talk about the offensive line injuries and everything feels like it's kind of on track. While Pittsburgh's plus 180 to make the playoffs at the moment. They face Cincinnati, Chicago, and Buffalo the next 3 weeks. And if you're going to score 3 points, 8 points, 10 points, or 12 points, you're not going to beat any of those three teams. And so I really believe at this point it's, and right now you look at their win total live, 8.5. So the question is, once again, every single week, every time we do this, will they finish over 500 or will they not? Everyone assumes yes, but things seem to be headed in like they can never put both sides of the ball together in the same game. And sometimes the offense looks great. Aaron's happy. He's, hates the defense. And then all of a sudden the defense plays well and he's putting up 3 points and mad because everyone drops the ball. And I just don't know what to make of it other than Baltimore's coming. And we're going to talk about it in a second, but they seem to be just fine getting healthier while Pittsburgh seems to be fumbling games away. And, it's not like they should have won this game. They were an underdog, but it shouldn't have been over in the first quarter.
Yeah, it seemed like the Steelers were playing really well and playing very Steelers underdog, Tomlin rah-rah style, and it really felt like it swung on that Rodgers safety when he just Aaron Rodgers just looked like old man Rodgers tonight. Like you can't hold the ball for like 7 seconds in the end zone, and there was a shot where Kenny got away and could throw it away, and then he was like, oh, maybe I'll make a play now, and like took another step, and then it was just done. He almost could have turned into a touchdown. It would have been over even faster then, but it just felt like there were plays today where, like, I don't know that we've often, in 2 decades of watching Aaron Rodgers, seen him just get figured out. And it felt like the Chargers just had a plan and had Rodgers found out in this game, which is just a weird thing to see. And it's certainly early in the year, it was like, all right, the Steelers needed a quarterback. They got the defense. We just need some offense. And it was the opposite. The offense was doing pretty well, but the defense was terrible. Now it feels like the defense has kind of stepped up and figuring some things out, and the offense is disappearing. And that's kind of how you get to a win total right at 500. So if you're watching live on YouTube or on Twitter, hit us in the comments. Who's your long shot? Who's the plus odds team that's going to make the playoffs? Who's the minus odds team that's going to fall out? Is it Pittsburgh still getting in? Is it the Chargers still falling out? We love our long shots. I'm curious what people think. I think it's very open right now.
Yeah, for anyone watching the broadcast of Sunday Night Football who saw every time Cameron Dicker hit a field goal, Harbaugh looked like he was, the best joy of his entire life. Like he was having almost an orgasm. It looked like every time Cameron Dicker got a field goal, it was because they couldn't score on the other side. He knew every field goal was almost a touchdown. And that's what it felt like in this one. All right, let's keep rolling here. Patriots and Bucks, probably the other best, a lot of really good games on tap. I feel like between last week, this week, and next week, this was definitely one of them. And it lived up to the bill. So the Patriots win the game 28-23, 2.5-point underdogs. The total goes over 48.5. We're going to talk about this further when we get to the Rams game at the end, because we kind of want to save the conversation. But at the moment, Drake May, now the co-favorite to win MVP with Matthew Stafford. Everything he did in this game, aside from one thing, I really just have beef with one play. So it's the good and bad of Drake May, but it all happened in one drive. So he has the 54-yard pass to Mac Hollins. In the fourth, it was beautiful. Truly a great down the field throw. Then 5 plays later, 3rd and goal, looking for Hollins. It's a disaster. Throwing that interception, leaving points on the board, only being up 21-16. It was literally when that happened, I said to myself, that is the play that a person who, top 3, favorite, whatever you want to call it, can't make. We would be killing Pat. We would be killing Josh, especially after that throw all in the same drive. Felt very roller coastery. But that's my opinion. Drake May, completions of 19, 26, 54, and 72 in this game. He did everything like usual, but man, that throw was frustrating.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that throw, but that's a good point, because outside of that throw, this really is your MVP game for Drake May. Booty is out, the go-to guy really, as he's become at least down the field, and downfield is where the Patriots have been so deadly. So what's Drake May do? Throws 72-yard touchdown to Kyle Williams, the rookie that like we've seen nothing from all year. He throws 100 yards to Mac Hollins, just like the half tight end blocking dude down to the end of the bench that's just been journeyman around the NFL for a while. That is what an MVP does, is goes out and leads his team that way and leads them to the top of the division now. They're a game clear of Buffalo after the Bills, pretty surprising division loss. That's going to be a big deal for them. So it's interesting because I thought, to me, this was not as dominant a performance about the Patriots as you would think. Like, they went on the road, they went to Tampa, they got the win, but it was really just like a handful of really big plays. And it was right around both sides of halftime that really swung the game. So the big talking point in this one is they get down 1st and goal on like the 1 yard line under 2 minutes right before halftime. And Mike Vrabel has Drake May basically take a knee. Like he just runs into the ground on purpose to burn it down, to burn time, because they wanted the Bucs to not get the ball back. Now that's real respect for Baker Mayfield, but it's also giving up a down. And they did not score in 2nd down or 3rd down, then had to go for it on 4th down with like 5 seconds left, which was the plan. They wanted to use up the clock. They got it. But man, talk about us getting on somebody's case if they don't make the play, the Drake May throw. Mike Vrabel's getting killed right now. If he just takes a knee and goes on 4th down and doesn't get that score, they get it. Then they come out right after halftime, get the ball back. And I think on like the second play, Travion Henderson has a long touchdown. So now you have, in like a 1 minute window around halftime, 14 points in a 28-23 game. That's the game. That's the entire game right there. But it shows how thin the margins are. And really, we talk about success rate, and you hear about success rate and EPA. This was not a successful game for the Patriots offense. They didn't move the ball that well. They just happened to have big plays when they did. Trevion had 2 long touchdowns. Kyle Williams had the long touchdown. They got the big 4th down touchdown there to save it. That's it. That was the game. You get enough big plays, it works. But a lot of the underlying metrics on both of these teams paint them much worse than their record. I know the Bucs have been high in the luck rankings all year. I think they were kind of unlucky to lose this game, to be honest. So maybe just evening out a little bit there. But I do feel like people are going to be getting ahead of themselves a little bit with the Patriots. They're 8-2 now. They play the next game Thursday night against the Jets. So let's call it 9-2. Then they got Bengals and Giants. Pretty good shot. This team's 11-2. And suddenly, like, you think Drake May is the favorite for MVP right now? How about playing the Jets, Bengals, and Giants? They're going to be the MVP favorite after that probably as well. And they're going to be 11-2 and shooting for the 1 seed in the division, and like everything that lines up that way. This doesn't feel like that team to me yet. And if you keep winning, it doesn't matter. But I do think for today, that's something to take note of for sure.
I mean, yeah, New England could have lost this game while having 4 plays of 50+ yards, and that would have been a very different story. I mean, only won by a few points. I think the story. So yes, New England's great. I have another stat on them in a second, which I can talk about. But I think the other thing's kind of Tampa, like at Buffalo, at the Rams coming up. I mean, granted, they're 6-3 now. Carolina is their biggest competition at 5-5 in the division, and there's still 2 games versus Tampa Bay still to come. So, I mean, if Tampa Bay decides to drop another game or whatever, that matchups against Carolina will at least be fun. But Tampa Bay minus 600 in the division right now. So, if you have any faith in anything else, there's a complete value on the other side. But to me, this is just a loss against competition is kind of what the odds is telling you. One other sorry, continue. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that the Bucs, there's no shame in losing the Patriots. Certainly they're a playoff team at the very least. Like it's a fine loss in a game that they maybe could have or should have won. You could even argue, but on the same day, in the worst division probably in football, the Falcons blow a game that they could have won, and the Panthers blow their easiest game on their schedule, presumably. So it's a charm life if you're the Bucs. Like we don't factor that in. I'm sure Nick Giffen and the guys, I don't think will the Panthers and Falcons in your awful division lose stupid games? That's not in the luck rankings, but it could be. The Bucs still got lucky today, even when they didn't get lucky in this game. One other note, just a shout out. We hit the full escalator on Kate Otten. We love Kate Otten at Action Network. 9 for 82 today. We hit 7 for plus 350, 8 for 7-1, 9 at 12-1. And I don't know this is going away either. The Bucs and more teams around the league are playing heavier sets, more tight ends. I do think that's a trend. And as long as the Bucs are shorthanded, I don't know how long Bucky Irving will be out. I don't know how long Godwin will be out. To be this close against a good team without those guys, I think is fine for Tampa. But Kate Otten, we may need to keep playing him too.
Yeah, I mean, they're just shorthanded kind of all over the place. In the pass defense, at least from a big play perspective, got absolutely roasted today. I looked this up just because I was curious, but New England's now won 7 in a row, 6-1 ATS in those games. I tried to find like a decent comparison because between them being best ATS, best record in a lot of circumstances, and Drake Mays like going for the MVP, and they didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, when you talk about like a pedigree of a team and where they've come from, just pretty crazy. So you look at week 11 or earlier, making a streak of 7 straight wins while going 6-1 ATS in those games, 21 Cardinals, 20 Steelers. Like it hasn't happened in a while, and this team's kind of coming out of nowhere. So at this point, last time I looked, minus 4,500 to make the playoffs, minus 210, 220, 230 to win the division. But minus 4,500. I mean, they're in the playoffs no matter what, even if Buffalo catches them. So, and one more thing, New England, easiest remaining strength of schedule, 33.8%, Brandon. 33.8%. They got 4 games versus Miami once, the Giants once, and the Jets twice. Still coming up. So, a lot of wins still in the schedule. All right, let's keep going here. Germany in the morning. This game was, what it's going to deliver next week. I mean, listen, you never know what a game's gonna happen, but when you've got Washington and Miami next week, you really hope this one stepped up, and it did. I mean, Indy wins the game 31-25 in overtime. Atlanta ends up covering on the close plus 6.5. Total goes over 48.5. But yeah, this one was a thriller. I mean, this one was fun, kind of whistle to whistle, lots of different things. And, I think the quarterback play on both sides can always be shaky at times. Like, I don't think even with everything Daniel Jones has done, I think we always kind of, you see the pumpkin comments, but it's mostly about that, like, even when it's good, it can look kind of scary. And I think you say the same thing about Penix. And I think 6 lead changes, 7 drives in the fourth quarter between the two teams. Like, this one just kind of was chaos all over the place. And the one thing I'll say before I get your comment is kind of what made it a thriller. Atlanta went 0 for 8 on third down. So between the two teams, created their own chaos a little bit in this one.
Yeah, it's interesting that it felt like such a good, fun game watching because really both teams were terrible on third down. Atlanta did not convert all game, like you said. They were combined 2 of 20, though. So the Colts were only 2 of 12 themselves, and that's a team that has been moving the chains about as well as any team in football. Neither team had a third down conversion through 3 quarters. And then at the end of regulation, they had 1. So one of them was just that last drive the Colts finally won with. So just crazy that happened, but it still felt like a pretty good game because it never really felt to me like the defense on either side could make a stop here. It felt like it was up to the offense to make a mistake. And the mistake was Daniel Jones. And the mistake was Michael Penix missing a throw, taking a sack, fumbling the ball. Like, these teams in this game, to me, they felt like they're looking in a mirror a little bit, where we're seeing plenty of talent on offense. We're seeing some blocking. We're seeing some schemes open stuff up. But this is the story of the season for both teams. You have the Falcons in a winnable game with plenty of talent, plenty of chances, and they just can't close the deal. And you have the Colts in a winnable game that finds a way to maximize their talent. To me, I know Jonathan Taylor, monster line again, had the one huge run that just kind of broke the numbers. This to me was a coaching win. Coaching and special teams for the Colts really swung it. I know Jonathan Taylor did the good stuff too, but this is why the Colts are 8-2 and why the Falcons are 3-6. is because over and over again, you'd see Colts guys just in space. Now, Daniel Jones missed them some of the times, and it stayed close, and they almost lost, but coaching just kept scheming the stuff up for Indy, and I felt like that was really, to me, a story worth taking away, because despite the coaching, Daniel Jones, 3 fumbles, 7 sacks, interception as well. Last 3 games now, 15 sacks for Daniel Jones. We talked about that last week too. He also has 3 fumbles in back-to-back weeks now. You figure 3 in one game, all right, the football's hard to keep hold of. You're going to have good security now next week, right, Danny? You're going to keep care of the ball now, right? Didn't happen. Plus 4 interceptions now in that 3-game stretch. So I don't know about the pumpkin thing, but he did not look great in this game. And particularly on the timing, this was the week that the Colts really made a big bet on Daniel Jones. They traded both of their next 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner, who, by the way, wasn't great in this game, but he'll settle in. But that's a bet on Daniel Jones as much as it is on Sauce Gardner, because you don't have any other way to get a quarterback now. You don't think it's Richardson. He hasn't played anyway. You thought it was Daniel Jones, and then this is what you get for the vote of confidence. I don't feel like I'm going to feel great about that if I'm Indy coming out of this game. What do you think?
I mean, they won. I feel like we're giving it like there's two angles here. Like Atlanta's 3-6. I think Indy has aspirations based off of giving up capital, making those types of trades. Like they, at this point, they're going to go to the playoffs. They want to win a Super Bowl. Like they want to go to an AFC championship game. Like there's aspirations there. So I think, grading them based off those aspirations, I think you're completely fine. I think from Atlanta's point of view, like they're so one-dimensional in terms of their offense. Like it's Drake London or nothing, because I don't have a lot of faith in Penix. I think the run game is almost always going to be there for them. But when you target Darnell Mooney 8 times and you have 1 reception, like there's a problem. Like obviously something is going on where Drake London is making the pass game look better. And I think he can have 3 touchdowns and that's all fine and good. But I think it becomes a little more one-dimensional, and I think you need more in the offense than that. And I think that's part of what's going on in Atlanta. So I think that's one angle on it. You mentioned the sacks on Daniel Jones. Last 2 games, being pressured 30 times is also like I feel like the offensive line is giving him a little bit of a problem. Now, I have to look at the data. Maybe it's sacks being held to the quarterback, and maybe it's not so much the line, but 30 pressures in 2 games has me a tiny bit worried there. I think it's also Jonathan Taylor. The game today, just specifically on statistics, was absolutely stupid. So I think it's worth saying 32 carries, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an 83-yard rush. I looked this up because it's worth saying. So the last time we saw a 3,203 game, Derrick Henry 2019. The last time we saw a 30-carry, 200-yard, 3 touchdown with an 80-yard rush, Sean Alexander in 2001. That is what we saw with Jonathan Taylor today. And when you look at most rushing touchdowns this season, it is the Colts with 22, the Bills with 16, Jonathan Taylor with 15, and then everyone else.
Yeah, I mean that one Taylor run was a 31% win probability added. Like that was, he got basically hit at the line. It's an 83-yard run with 82 yards after contact, and he got hit there. It looked like it was just like another run up the middle, and suddenly he bounced it outside and picked up everything. It was 78 yards rushing over expectation. So we're going to come back to the MVP thing, but this is the story in the MVP race today, is that Jonathan Taylor, we get one every year, right? A non-quarterback. He's the one very clearly this year on the possible 1 seed in the AFC. He's now basically priced about even odds with the top 3 to 5 guys at most books. And we're going to get there, but I'm going to give you a stat on Taylor. Okay. I'll come back to it in a second. I want to get to Michael Penix. Then I'll get back to the Taylor stat because it leads into it. Penix, 12 ADOT for the game, minus 16 completion over expected. He was 12 of 28, minus 0.13 EPA per play. You can't live that way if you're Atlanta. That is unsustainable drive to drive, game to game, because you're going to hit the big play, probably to Drake London, but there's not enough substance there, right? You're eating dessert every play, but you're never getting like the meal along with it. London, 6 for 104. 6 is half of the receptions for the entire game. Like, that's not a whole offense that way. But here's where I come back to the Jonathan Taylor stat. You look at EPA. How many points are we adding of value to a team? He just ran, like you said, 32 times, 244 yards, 3 scores, including 1 touchdown out of nothing from his own 20, basically. He finishes the game as a runner, 9.5 EPA. That's really good. But for comparison, Drake London, 7.8 EPA. Not much further behind. Tyler Warren, his own teammate, 7.8, same as Drake London. That's like less than 2 EPA difference to Jonathan Taylor. And so for the crowd that's like, well, why does it gotta be a quarterback? Can't it be so? It's because all the numbers we have are telling us how valuable a good quarterback can add in a big game, like 20, 25 EPA. You're never getting that from a running back game. That's just not the way that you can impact a game that way. So I think that matters in the MVP race. I think it matters too, because when we get these teams with the Derrick Henry, with the Sean Alexander, those teams typically aren't really the teams winning in deep playoff runs either, because if your most valuable player on your team is the running back, then the quarterback sometimes turns into a pumpkin in January, and now your season's over after that as well. So I think it's also a good reminder of what Indy is big picture, and they're 8-2, but the schedule is tough. They get a bye now, I believe, and then they go at the Chiefs. So that will be our next game of the year coming up. Chiefs kind of need that one, by the way, too. And then they still play Houston, both games. Houston's not dead yet. We'll get to them. They still play both Jacksonville games. So the division's not done and dusted either. All the teams that they could possibly lose to in the division, not the Titans, basically, they still have them all. They go at Seattle. They have San Fran. There's a lot of losable games still if Daniel Jones is not great. And you mentioned all the pressures. Pressures are up, but the pressure to sack rate is up also. So it's Daniel Jones isn't getting help, but he's not helping himself either. And it can't just be Jonathan Taylor all the time. Look, last week, Jonathan Taylor didn't have a big game, didn't really do a lot, and then the Colts lost that game. So it's a story we're going to do every year. With Saquon Barkley last year, there's always somebody like this, but I think it's the same story we keep telling.
Yeah, for the Colts, though, over their win total of 7.5 already today with their 8th win, which is a fun story in itself. If you look at their odds, so minus 350 earlier today to win the division, now minus 425 to win the division. They were minus 1,600 to make the playoffs, now minus 2,000. Basically, everyone telling you this one is wrapped up and they're going to make it. But you are right in what you're saying. They have the 3rd toughest remaining strength of schedule. Their easiest games on their schedule going forward is Houston twice. So that tells you everything you need to know about what's to come. All right, you ready to go?
Yeah, let's go to Houston.
Yeah, let's do it. Houston wins 36-29 as a 1.5 favorite on open, but 1.5 dog on close, which very important if you saw the very end of this game. Total goes over 37.5. My note here is some games it's how you start that gets you near the top of our rundown, but sometimes it's how you finish. And this one, listen, it started without Brian Thomas Jr. not playing in this game. And you said to yourselves, all right, well, Jacksonville's going to be very shorthanded on the offensive side. And turned out it ain't matter. They were up 17-0 in this game. They led 29-10. I mean, Davis Mills on the other side. And I saw a lot of handicaps and a lot of people saying, well, it might be Davis Mills, but I think he can, be just fine in this offense, get the ball to Nico Collins, which he ended up doing in this game. But to me, absolutely ridiculous that Jacksonville's pass defense allows Houston back into the game in general. Like Davis Mills' second career game with 3+ touchdowns and 30+ on offense. Houston goes 10 of 15 on 3rd down. They had 17 passing first downs in this game behind Davis Mills. Like it just, I honestly just can't happen from Jacksonville's standpoint, especially with their fight for the playoffs. They're going to look back at this one and be like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I basically had that same note. I have Jacksonville 5-4, going to miss the playoffs because they lost to Davis Mills and Woody Marks. Like that's going to sting in the offseason. I think you're bearing the lead, though. This is a betting podcast. This game was 29-10 with under 13 left, and you're sitting on Houston -1.5. That thing is deader than dead. And then Houston comes all the way back, takes the lead, but misses the 2-point conversion. So it's a 1-point game. It's over.
I forgot about the miss. I forgot about the miss.
There's no pitchy witchy woo woo possibilities. And then on the last play of the game, we get a fumble 6 that Will Anderson gets around, strips the ball, and for no reason whatsoever, the second time this season, we had the block field goal at the Eagles game earlier this year. I think Eagles Bucks, where it's like the game is over. Fall down, large man. The game is over. Don't possibly ruin this. And instead, it goes back all the way for the walk-off touchdown, basically. The game's over anyway, but suddenly the Texans win by 7. It doesn't matter what line it was or when you bet it during the week. It covered everything. But if you bet it early in the week, or if you bet this morning right before the game, you needed that play at the buzzer. And if you bet Jacksonville, you're up 29-10 and you think you're coasting to a win. Didn't go well. So the reality is, despite the crazy comeback, which I don't know, wasn't even really crazy. The way there were no super crazy things other than tell that last play. I don't really have much on the game itself because I think that Jacksonville was really a no-show this game. They should have never been ahead 29-10. Houston ended up with almost 200 more yards than Jacksonville in this game. They were at 6 yards of play to 3.9. They crushed him in success rate. Nico, like you said, had a huge game. 15 targets, 7 balls for 136. Honestly, a little troubling to me. You're doing that with Davis Mills. CJ Stroud, where you at, bro? Where you been the rest of the season if that's what Nico can do when Davis Mills is throwing the ball? And on the flip side, man, I don't know if Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence is going to work because that man on the sideline is not happy with Trevor Lawrence right now. Lawrence finishes with 5 sacks. Again, we keep talking about this with him. 6 sacks the first 5 games. 20 sacks the last 4 games. Oof. I think that's Lawrence, and it's the offensive line that looked good early against bad competition and now is facing real teams. Houston's a good one, obviously. Lawrence finishes -14 completion over expected, -0.15 EPA per play. And, that's their guy. They paid him big money. And we're looking at all these former number 1 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray also, who can we take Kyler and Tua and Lawrence and just shuffle them up and draw names out and put them on new teams because they're all these highly drafted, highly paid quarterbacks and their teams do not seem happy with them right now. And yeah, I think this is the one Jacksonville looks back on and thinks, man, I can't believe we blew that one. That's our season.
Yeah, if this is a Madden franchise, all 3 of those quarterbacks would be sitting there in free agency and you'd have your pick of them. The other thing is just comebacks in general. Pretty crazy. We had 9 teams come back from 14 plus points down to win last year. After this game, this is our 9th this year already. So 9 all of last year from 14 plus down. We just had our 9th with this one. And here's if it wasn't for that stat I found off the top, this was probably one of my favorite ones. So teams up 19 plus entering the 4th quarter. Crazy. It's 97% against the spread in the last decade. But the last time we saw a team line of -3 or less or a dog, 149-1 against the spread when you're up 19 plus entering the 4th quarter. The last time a team didn't cover, Patriots Falcons Super Bowl 28-3. And that was the last time before today a team didn't cover up 19 plus with a line that short. Absolutely incredible. Something you just don't see. And I did the favorites earlier with Kendra Middleton, who is a huge Jaguars fan. It was a Sad Cats podcast. But the thing that's interesting is Houston 1-1 versus Jacksonville now. Jacksonville's obviously a game up, but Houston's last time I looked plus 360 to make the playoffs. Jaguars a coin flip, basically a pick 'em. So a lot to come for both teams.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty damaging loss for Jacksonville's playoff hopes. And Houston,
Yeah.
4-5. They play the Titans next, so presumably 5-5. For better or worse, I don't think they're dead because they've got a tough schedule. They play the Bills, they play the Colts twice, like we said. They play the Chiefs. Playing the Chiefs is not so bad. Playing the Bills is not so bad. Those are teams that are wild card teams right now in the AFC. Those are teams the Texans need to lose so they can win games to try to make the playoffs, and they can win those games. They get a head-to-head shot to get a loss and a win and a head-to-head. Like, they're possibly live still, as bad as everything has gone. The defense is as good as anybody in the NFL still, and this is the sort of game that might quietly save a season when we didn't really notice it, when Davis Mills burns down one season but saves another one. Like, we could wake up a month from now in December and the Texans are right there in the mix of things. They're going to have to pull some more upsets and hopefully not do another 26-0 fourth quarter. But you play the Bills, Colts, Chiefs, you have a shot. The Texans can win those games, so they're still interesting.
I'm glad you have faith. Bills, Colts, Chiefs. Woof. All right. Before we move on, don't forget to sign up for Action Pro for real-time pick alerts from experts like Brandon Anderson, Chris Raybon, Stuckey, our entire Action Network team. Plus, you can access our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro. Get $20 off the annual price with the promo code POD20, POD20. Do not miss out on the best price at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro. Use our promo code POD20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right. It is shorter recaps. We will go through these a little bit quicker, but Miami wins 30-13 as an 8.5-point dog against the Bills. Total goes under 50. I want to talk about some of these injuries as we get to them, but Dalton Kincaid left this game with a hamstring injury, so something to look forward with Buffalo facing Tampa Bay, Houston, and Pittsburgh in their next 3 games. Nothing easy there. But listen, it isn't every week, and I didn't even look this up, but I'll make the assumption that Buffalo loses wire to wire. It just isn't something you see with Josh Allen. And the fact that Miami opened the game with a touchdown, after Tua got picked, but we're going to ignore that. We're going to say they opened the game with a touchdown because it sounds better. But it's 16-6 with 7 minutes left. Buffalo's driving down the field. And I think everyone is saying to themselves, like, this still has a ton of game left, and Miami may not even be favored at this point with Buffalo driving. But Josh fumbles, and the game really never gets back to them. Buffalo played terribly. They looked like they didn't enjoy the heat, about 80 degrees in Miami. It just felt like their defense was gassed. This is the crazy one to me. Early down rushes, minus 0.36 EPA per play for Buffalo on 16 plays. They just couldn't do anything on the ground early down, made it very difficult to move the ball. But 3 turnovers, 2 were on Josh. You have 1 red zone trip. They went 0 for 1. This was, and honestly, most importantly, 0 sacks on Tua. If you're going to do that, you're just not going to beat the Dolphins.
Yeah, just some weird plays for Buffalo. They just kind of seem lethargic in the heat. But like you mentioned, the Allen fumble late in the game, that's on a tush push, basically, that Buffalo's really good at. Like, Allen's unstoppable, and he gets through, but then keeps going. That was a 15-yard run on a QB sneak that Allen's just running away and then kind of pushing through guys. And like, I don't know, did Miami do that on purpose and let him go a little further? Because then they strip the ball as he's just, it's weird. There's like this pile moving forward, and a 15-yard QB sneak turns into a fumble that kind of basically ended the game at that point. Achane suddenly puts up like 2 long touchdowns to put the game away after that. But Allen had that play early, right after halftime. The Bills drive right down the field, and Allen throws a pick like 5 yards out of the end zone. And it just, like, again, back-breaking plays. This to me felt like the Bills of a couple of years ago, where Josh Allen went a little too often into Superman mode and then got a few kryptonite tastes today. Cook was supposed to have a big game, was a little banged up this week, so maybe that was part of it. He had a fumble in the red zone, their one opportunity. He did not run well. I was on Cook this game. Miami's run defense has not been good. He just didn't do well enough. And I think the Kincaid injury, I think, is definitely a real concern. Tucker Kraft with Green Bay comes to mind. Kincaid's really important to that offense. So I don't think he's quite Tucker Kraft, but just it's a concern. Well, you mentioned the schedule. Bills now play Bucs at Houston, at Pittsburgh. They still go to New England in December. They still play Philadelphia in December. This, to me, is not a real worrying loss for the Bills' big picture. What it is it's damaging the division race. It's damaging in the 1 seed race. It's damaging in the MVP race. All those things are combined. And I think at this point, you kind of have to assume the Bills probably are looking at 5-6 losses at least. That probably means a wild card team. Because remember, while the Bills are playing the next 3 weeks, Tampa, Houston, and Pittsburgh, the Patriots are playing Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, and Jackson Dart. That's what's happening in there. So I think it's finally time to take Patriots division seriously. And by extension, and we'll get to it shortly, if the Patriots win the division, are one of the top 2 seeds, Drake may MVP also along with that. And we keep expecting in the AFC, like the odds keep sitting at Chiefs, Bills, Ravens. Chiefs, Bills, Ravens. That's fine. Doesn't really matter what happens on the field. Doesn't matter the season's half over. Chiefs, Bills, Ravens. It's all the teams we know. Well, right now, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens are probably the 3 wild cards in the AFC. So it might have to start mattering at some point.
One more thing on this game. Bills lose the game 30-13. They were 8.5-point favorites. So that means they failed to cover today by 25.5 points, which would be the worst margin in a game since 2021 against the Colts. I don't know if anyone remembers that game, but they got their doors blown off that day against that Colts team. But yeah, it's been about 4 years since the Bills really felt this bad about a game they should have won. I'll say this. Buffalo is 6-3. You mentioned it. Bucs, Texans, Steelers. If that's 1-2, that can't be 1-2 because I don't know, 7-5. Like you start to get into some trouble in the AFC. That's just kind of the way I look at it. I'll only say this very, very fast because it most likely doesn't happen. But it is kind of funny that Miami's 3-7 and they have Washington, New Orleans, and the Jets in their next 3 games. After those 3 games, super difficult, but they also have the 3rd easiest strength of schedule the rest of the way. They're 80-1 to make the playoffs. I will just leave it at that. Buffalo, interesting enough, minus 1,800 to make the playoffs, about 9-1 to miss. So before they face Tampa Bay, who's desperate, Houston, who's desperate, and Pittsburgh, who's going to need every single win. Interesting nonetheless. All right, you ready to keep rolling?
Let's do it.
The Ravens beat the Vikings. Sorry, Brandon. 27-19. Cover minus 4.5 on the road. Under 48.5 cashes. The Vikings lead this game 10-3. It's 7 drives into the game. It's middle of the second quarter. Minnesota's moving the ball. Baltimore has 3 punts and a field goal at this point. And this is, to me, when the entire game changes. And I know I'm actually curious how you feel about this game because I looked at it and then I rewatched some of it. And I still feel this way, that McCarthy throws the interception trying to go over the top to Jefferson, steps up into the pocket. I watched the throw a few times. Like he actually thought Jefferson had a step. Starks comes in, makes the interception, and then the game completely flips. Like Minnesota then goes punt, interception, fumble, turnover on downs, field goal, turnover on downs. Next 6 drives, and then it's 27-13 Baltimore. Game completely other way. Minnesota's 3-14 on 3rd down, 13 penalties, 102 yards, 3 turnovers. Like they were a mess, but it really didn't start that way. So what do you feel? How do you feel with this one?
Yeah, I kind of had similar notes. Opening drive, 7 plays, 86 yards, touchdown, like exactly what you want. These are the script plays that you practiced all week. That's one drive, 86 yards. The next 8 drives, 94 yards combined on 27 plays, 3 points. So one drive goes great, and then that's it really until kind of what wasn't quite garbage time, but pretty close to it. And really, I think the Ravens were kind of unlucky to only have 27 points also. I think if you had the under, or if you had the over here, I think you're pretty unlucky to miss this one. Baltimore goes 2 of 5 in the red zone. They missed the field goal as well. I think this game could have easily had like 60, 70 points if things flip a little bit differently. Baltimore had or the Vikings had 2 of 5 on 4th down, 3 of 14 on 3rd down. Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, 23 targets, 7 catches. You can't have that ratio. That's not enough catches on so many targets. It's a weird thing with McCarthy that a lot of Vikings fans are kind of focusing in on. He seems to come in ready for the game, and then his adrenaline is like ramping up more and more as the game goes on, and the overthrows and accuracy get worse and worse as the game goes on. Some of the stats are pretty strange, and it goes like second, third, fourth quarter, keeps going up. You mentioned the penalties. The Vikings at home had 8 false starts in this game. You do not get false starts at home. The Vikings is one of the few teams that I still count in a pretty true home field advantage for. It's a loud stadium. You're not supposed to be loud to your own team and get 8 false starts. It's the most for a home team since 2009. That was not great. Crazy stat from this game on the other side. Frankly, I don't really feel like the Ravens were amazing in this game. Like, I don't feel like I should be like, oh yeah, the Ravens are back now. They kind of just been grinding a little bit for a few weeks. But here's a crazy Derrick Henry stat. Do you know that today, finally, for the first day in his life, Derrick Henry has more rushing yards in the NFL than he did in his high school career. His high school career, he had 12,124. It took until year 10 of a presumably Hall of Fame career for him to finally pass his 4-year high school career. That's just pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, his watch is officially ended as of today with that stat passing. The other one I thought was kind of interesting. So the Vikings turn to now 0-6 against the spread under Kevin O'Connell after facing the Lions, which is something I looked at. But it seemed that they were just a little flat after a pretty decent scripted start in this one. Also, from Baltimore's standpoint, it's going to be really fun. Their schedule coming up is pretty damn easy, and it's great that they need to go 10-0 to end the season to go over their win total. They've now already won 2 straight, and they have Cleveland, the Jets, and Cincinnati coming up in their next 3 games, all very winnable. So that gets closer, I just kind of root for things of that nature. But yeah, the reason the division odds have flipped is also Baltimore's schedule just kind of handing them some pretty easy games. And I'll say this. So I mentioned those teams, Cleveland, Jets, Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson is 21-5 straight up versus those 3 teams in his career. So at this point, you're kind of just making the assumption that Baltimore is at least going to go 2-1 in those games, probably 3-0. But there is precedence there. What do you think about just the future the Vikings, I think, are probably done, except for the funny thing is they are 2-0 in division, which kind of throws everything off. But their schedule, the thing that sucked for Minnesota, and you probably know this more than anyone, they were 3-2 straight up. They then had to face Philly, the Chargers, the Lions, the Ravens, the Bears, the Packers, and the Seahawks. Like that's just not fair, and kind of why they're hitting a bump.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do the Bears game next. For both of those teams, Vikings and Bears, it was teams that, by all logic going into the year, would make sense to start slow. You're getting a young quarterback. You're getting a new coaching staff for the Bears. You're getting new, and it's going to take a little to figure that out. But the schedule was only really soft at the opening of the year for both teams, and it was getting brutal later for both, and it is for Chicago as well, too. So Chicago is getting some wins, but both of these teams kind of needed to bank wins early. They played week 1, right? So they needed both to get that first win, and they needed to get some wins early, and Minnesota just didn't do it. And look, I wore the Carson Wentz jersey how many times? Like, JJ goes out after 2 games. In hindsight, that probably was the season. Like, I don't know that he's ready to be a playoff quarterback in the NFC. The way he looks, he's not. But the way he looks is still only like 5 games into his career. And you lose those games without him on the field, that maybe you get an extra win or 2, but you also lose that extra month of JJ playing football and kind of getting a chance to figure some of the stuff out. I think you're right. Like, this season becomes, what can the Vikings do to find out what do they have in JJ McCarthy? And is he the guy that you can go into next year? Or do you have to go out and get a Sam Darnold or a Daniel Jones but whatever next year's version is of that guy, somebody to compete with him, or is he your guy going forward? And right now, I don't think you can say he's not the guy. It's too early to tell that, but I don't think they can feel confidence he is. And I guess to transition us to our next game, like that is a distinct comparison to Caleb Williams, who I think is kind of showing maybe he is the guy really for the Bears. What do you think?
Yeah, so let's just set that up. So Chicago next week is at Minnesota. And of course, Chicago wins the game today, 24-20. Giants end up covering close 4.5, total under 44.5. I think, Chicago is what it is in terms of the comeback. And I think that game kind of flips when Dart goes out of the game. But I think it really just sets up again next week. Like, I think Minnesota and Chicago almost becomes a way more just important matchup for, obviously Chicago just needs to keep winning, but Minnesota's season probably on the line after the loss today. But what do you make of both Giants, Bears, and kind of the matchup next week?
Yeah, this sort of feels like a loser goes home sort of matchup, like WWE style. So I think both have to have it. It feels like a game that I'm not going to be super excited to bet, just because both teams have been pretty unpredictable. And I'll be honest, I'm not reading the Vikings that well this season, which is often the case. I don't love betting my team. My heart gets in the way a little bit. But I feel like Giants here. I don't know how much longer you can keep Dable around. Like, this is now the fourth time this season the Giants have led by double digits in the fourth quarter on the road. They are 0-4 in those games straight up. So you keep losing. They had, where's in the notes? They had 4th and 1 on the 1 yard line, up 7, 10 minutes left. You're the Giants. You're not going anywhere. Why are you kicking a field goal on that play? And of course, the Bears come all the way back after that. I think, to me, the takeaway from the game, kind of a dreary game, mostly a sort of a dreary day in Chicagoland. Jackson Dart's injury has to be the story. Leaves with a concussion, 2 touchdowns rushing. Like, that's the thing, is he's getting his value on the ground, but you get your value on the ground, you also get hit when you're on the ground. So I think that's the worry, because Russell Wilson came in and was awful on not a lot of plays. But the Giants play the Packers next week. Packers don't love Russell Wilson. They've had a few matchups in their career. They might be sending Russ into early retirement. Like, if I'm the Giants and if Dart is out, and usually concussion, you probably miss a week. CJ Stroud just missed a game. I think Dart probably doesn't play. If I'm the Giants and I actually want to compete, and maybe they don't want to compete, maybe they'd like to lose. Hello, Russell Wilson. Jameis Winston's on the roster. Like, if I want to actually compete, I'd rather have Jameis out there at this point than Russ. So I think maybe it could be a gift for the Packers, who will come in on a short week. We'll get to that big Packers-Eagles game shortly here. But yeah, I think Jackson Dart missing, and it is too, maybe the story from a future standpoint, it will now be a third game Dart doesn't play, because obviously he didn't play the first 2 to start the year. Maybe Rookie of the Year is open still. Emeka Egbuka had another good game today. Tyler Warren continues to play well. If Dart misses a game, or even potentially 1 concussion, you get a second hit later, you might miss 3-4 games after that, especially as the franchise quarterback when your season as a team is done. Like, that, to me, might be the story here from a betting standpoint, that maybe there's some value in Rookie of the Year down the line, where Dart is pretty clearly the favorite at this point, but this injury might open up that race.
Yeah, updated odds there. Ibuka is -105, Dart +140, which has flipped. Dart was the favorite, I believe, entering this week, and had been for a little while. Third option, Tyler Warren +550. Then you get Junkins, McMillan, and Genty. But I think it's probably a 2-horse race. Be interesting how good Warren would have to play to get involved. Like, you'd probably need more Bucks pass catchers and Dart to miss a few more games. But Warren is an intriguing option. One thing I will say is this, and I said this earlier on the favorites, I'm a Giants fan, so I think you want them to lose games being a fan in this situation, especially with Neighbors and Scatabo and Dart. Like, let's just start over and get a better pick. But Russ comes in for 11 plays. -3.9 total EPA in 11 plays with a 2 ADOT. Like, you literally come into the game, Giants go 3 and out. Russ scrambles for 11 yards, and then he goes 5 and out, and then the game ends. That's how the game ended. And the Bears came back from down 10 points. Just literally unbelievable. I will say from Chicago's standpoint, something really key, which is super simple. I mean, Caleb wasn't sacked in this game. So when you look at a box score and you look at the Bears, and we've talked about this multiple times, you see 0 sacks. It's just a really important thing for Chicago. It's important for every team. But when I watch Chicago, I feel like that's the one thing I pay attention to. Chicago, now last 2 seasons, 8-5 straight up with 2 sacks or less, 3-10 when they get sacked 3+ times. It really just interrupts drives for them. And today, no sacks. Really good job. So that's one of my notes. Anything else here?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought Caleb looked great down the stretch. Like all the plays you want your franchise number one guy to make. He obviously runs in the score to get the win, but it just the way that he's improved pocket presence, the way that he's navigating it, getting away from pressure, hitting the big throws. He's been up and down, and it's fine. He's a young quarterback. He's going to be that. But to me, really passed the eye test today. And of course, you would rather just win easily if you're the Bears, but the Bears normally lose this game. Like this is the sort of game that the Bears are kind of feeling themselves, and then they lose a game against the Giants that you have to have. This is a little different. Maybe you go get these wins now, and Chicago's still kind of staying in the mix, obviously outside the playoff race at the moment, and a really tough schedule coming up. But this is maybe one of those moments for the team that even if you don't make the playoffs this year, when Caleb and Ben Johnson make the playoffs, maybe next year, this is one of those games you hear him talking about that was a turning point for this franchise, perhaps going forward.
This is how big it was. Chicago has won 3 of their last 4 games when trailing into the fourth quarter. So they have been the comeback kids. And right now, they have the hardest remaining strength of schedule, almost 58% in terms of their opponents. So that's how big today's game was. They just keep stacking these wins that they shouldn't get. They're just going to find their way into the playoffs. I mean, I looked a little bit ago. I believe they're plus 150. It's a coin flip. I mean, the Jaguars today lost, and we think they're done, and the Jaguars are around a coin flip. So with Chicago, anything can happen. All right, last game here before we just roll through some scores, but Rams win the game 42-26. They cover minus 5.5 on the road. Total goes over 49.5. The injury front, Devontae Adams oblique, he seemed all right. I believe he's going to be okay, but obviously with this team, definitely something to look for, especially with Seattle and Tampa Bay and Carolina on deck. I guess I can say Carolina is a big game for anyone now. But this is our first chance to talk the 4 p.m. slate, which that really just does say something about how great that 3 p.m. that 3-game 4 p.m. slate was, which was absolutely goddamn terrible. But well, if San Francisco gets within a touchdown, actually twice in the second half, this was the type of game where I think when you were just looking at the score, you said to yourself, oh, well, how are they within 8 or how are they within 7? Because it did happen twice in the second half after the Rams led 21-0. But all my notes were, and I kind of knew this going in, after the Rams had been upset by the Niners in week 5, you knew McVay was going to have them ready. Today, the Rams, no penalties, no turnovers, 5 of 6 in the red zone. Enough said.
Yeah, the Rams, this was just like a masterclass of stats for them. They have 63% success rate on the game. If you look at series success rate, so a series is a new first down. So a set of downs. How often do you get another first down or a touchdown? 93% series success rate for the Rams. So basically every time they got another first down or scored, 6 yards of play, 31 first downs, 0 penalties, 0 turnovers. That is just a total domination against, again, the defense that I've been calling the worst defense in the league, given the bodies that are left in San Francisco. And Rams, interesting note with them, especially with Devontae Adams, if he ends up missing any time at all, they have been playing increasingly more and more. We talked about this earlier, heavy personnel. The Rams started playing 13 personnel a few weeks ago. So 13, the 1 and the 3 means 1 running back, 3 tight ends. The Rams, Sean McVay's Rams, who for years played 11, like every single play on the field, are playing 3 tight ends. Today, 45% of their plays. So half their plays, basically. It's the second most by any team in any game since 2016, with 3 tight ends on the field. 3 straight games, 38% or higher for the Rams. Here's what happened in those, just the 13 plays this game, 13 personnel, 6.7 yards a play, 63% success rate, 20% explosive. So more and more, like this is the thing. We talked Rams Seahawks. That's the matchup next week. When we watched Seattle in primetime last week, what did they do? They go heavy. They put the tight ends and the big guys on the field, but then they pass and they go downfield. They're baiting the defense to match with their big guys and less defensive backs, and then they're passing right over top of it. And that leads us finally, we teased it, to our MVP conversation, because Matthew Stafford, for a third straight game, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Here's a list of players who have done that in NFL history. That's it. There's nobody. It's just Stafford. He's the only one. 25 touchdowns, 2 picks for the year. They have 2 losses. Crazy. I think Matthew Stafford's the MVP right now, and I think the MVP race needs to include him. As we're recording, sponsored by DraftKings, we talked just before the show. Odds were not up. Odds are up now, Evan. I'm going to read them for us. Here's the MVP odds leaders at our sponsor, DraftKings. Drake May, plus 275, ever slightly ahead of Matthew Stafford, 3-1. Then Patrick Mahomes, who's barely above 500, is exactly at plus 500 in MVP. Jonathan Taylor, we mentioned, running backs matter now, 6-1 for him. Josh Allen down to 7-1 off the loss. Sam Darnold, 10-1. Sam Darnold, that's where we're at now. And then everyone else, 22-1 or longer, including Jalen Hurts, 22-1. Jordan Love, 25-1. That's our matchup tomorrow, which we're going to get to in a second. But that's interesting too. Maybe you pick the winner of that game. Maybe one of those guys gets themselves into the race with the big game tomorrow. But May, Stafford, Mahomes, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold. Those are our 6 most likely MVPs halfway through the season. What do you think?
I think the MVP conversation has never been more interesting. I think I'm going to try to pitch this week that we do like an MVP draft, because I think strictly entering this week, it has never been more interesting. So I think off the bat, even the simplest way to kind of discuss the MVP, if you just look at passing touchdowns and interceptions and then kind of start your conversation that way, it gives you Stafford, who's 25-2. When I say 25-2, I'm talking about touchdowns, interceptions, very easily. 25-2, he's 3-1 at the top, basically. Then you have Drake May, 19-5, 3-1 at the top. The other guy sitting there, Jared Goff, who has 20-3, he's 30-1 at some of these books, which is kind of intriguing, because if those numbers got crazy and the Lions won some games, 30-1 seems intriguing. Now, let me just keep going for a second. You have the best player, Jonathan Taylor. Makes sense. He's there. Then I think you have something called the legacies, which would be Mahomes and Josh, which basically about 5 interceptions, about 16 passing touchdowns. Then you have one guy I haven't mentioned, the up-and-comer. Lamar Jackson's about 30-1. And he has 15 touchdowns and 1 pick. If the Ravens all of a sudden win the division, they win 4 or 5 more games, he's got 23 touchdowns and 1 pick. He has 24, 25. I just think it's an interesting conversation. I think the other one is Sam Darnold. Like, if Seattle keeps winning these games and his numbers can continue to look that way, like if he beats the Rams and throws 3 touchdowns, like he has the games and the opportunity to definitely move up the board. Right now, I believe it's 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I mean, probably has to go a few weeks without a pick, probably keep that number near 6. But to me, like, he's the guy that's not getting any talk, and Seattle could be 8-2 by the time this weekend after beating the Rams. It's a heck of an opportunity that's kind of on the table for him. And then you mentioned it. The winner of Monday Night Football tomorrow night is going to get a bump. Like, unless the game is absolutely terrible, whoever wins that game is going to get some amount of hype. And the 2 people I'm leaving out right now, just not worth conversation, in my opinion. Baker Mayfield, he has 16 touchdowns and 2 picks, but to me, you're just not winning the games and producing over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think you're out. And Justin Herbert, like, probably should be a part of some conversation, but 8 interceptions and your offense just isn't doing enough for you based on you. So that's my MVP discussion, but I think it's fascinating right now.
Yeah, I don't think you want to invest in Herbert with all the offensive line injuries. And I think the moment has passed with Baker. Like, he was
Yep.
the top 3 in the odds earlier in the season. He had the big moments, the big wins to end the game. But like I thought then, we move on quickly. We have the things change in a hurry. And like the Bucks losing that game today, probably not that big of a deal, big picture. But for Baker Mayfield, to me, that took the Bucks to this game today from a potential, the Bucks could be a 1 or 2 seed to, okay, they're probably the 3 or 4 seed. And suddenly those games against the Falcons and Panthers, nobody really cares what Baker does against those guys. Like, those are not marquee games. We keep talking about the game of the year of the week. Well, it's never the Bucks in these games. It's always these other teams getting head to heads. It's like, it's good to face these kind of bad teams. And I think, frankly, this is maybe a Drake May problem as well. We saw Drake May in one primetime game, and he was great against Buffalo. Well, he doesn't get many chances of that. So that maybe if you have a bad game, that maybe that helps you out. But we're going to get primetime Drake May in our next game here on Thursday night against the Jets. I don't know if that really counts, but it gets to the point now. We saw this with like Brock Purdy a few years ago, RIP to my ticket that I'm still holding on to from then. You become the favorite. Now you can only hurt your MVP stock after that. That's where Drake May is at. You can only do bad things on a Thursday night against the Jets to your MVP stock. And I think that's a Drake May thing. Certainly that's Sam Darnold, because the perception of Sam is always going to be that he's going to do something bad and ruin it. So I think that's why his odds are what they are. To me, Stafford's the guy that's a little bit bad proof in that way. Like, people love to kind of write off the bad things Stafford does. Oh, what a cool throw it was, though. Amazing throw. And maybe we do that because the dude won in a Super Bowl already. And so I feel like of all these players here, you mentioned the old guard, Mahomes and Allen, well, they got their MVPs. Hurts has Super Bowl MVP. Lamar's got his MVPs. Drake May, he'll have a chance later. Sam Darnold, I mean, come on. Is he really an MVP? Matt Stafford is on the verge of retirement, carrying the team on his back, on a back he's not supposed to be using because he's going to retire soon. And he's like heading into retirement soon. He's probably, I think, going to hit like top 5 in passing yards all time, or he's somewhere real high on the list from all the throws he's made. And he's a guy that could kind of get the career award bump also. Like, he's a guy that I think voters would fall over themselves to reward if he's in the picture in what seems like a pretty open race. So he's really intriguing to me. And I will admit, I have a 50-1 Stafford ticket from the offseason, so I'm especially intrigued on that as well. 3-1, you may have lost the window for now, but that Rams-Seahawks game next week is another one of those pushing the MVP forward. Stafford or Darnold, who's going to get the big boost? And we're going to keep getting like 1 or 2 of those games each week. Look, Bills-Bucks next week. So either Josh or Baker is going to get a little push after that, and either Josh or Baker is going to get a little bit buried after that. So we're going to keep doing that. And I guess my question back to you before we wrap this up on the MVP talk, we don't really say a lot about the guy who's not the guy and all that, Jonathan Taylor, who suddenly is right there in the middle of all this mix. I kind of made my case against Taylor earlier. What do you think about Jonathan Taylor? And if all these quarterbacks keep losing, what if the Colts just keep winning and Taylor, could he actually be the MVP in here?
He could be. I think you just missed the window. The crazy thing was, I looked at last year's odds in terms of MVP, and obviously it just depends on when you have your performance, obviously, for when you see the jump. But entering week 11 last year, Saquon was still 150-1. Jonathan Taylor is 5-1. I mean, that is, I mean, he has peaked already. He has hit his 15. Like, the stats right now are stupid. So he is going to have to keep this up on a longer pace at a lot shorter number. So do I think he can win it? I do. But I also think there's so many games left and so many good games left that I think we're just going to keep passing Taylor by the next quarterback. And he's going to continue to sit in that second and third slot unless the inevitable happens where people just keep beating each other. Like, somebody has to put a bit of a streak together here. And I don't think it necessarily has to be Drake May. I think it can be almost anybody in that top 5 to string 2 to 3 games together, say week 14 and 15 or 13, 14, 15. And I think it could keep Taylor down. But I'll say this. So Stafford's 25 touchdowns and 2 picks through 9 games. Only other person to do that, Mahomes in 2020. So he is on some crazy pace at the moment. All right, you ready to keep going to scores?
Yeah, one other thought on Jonathan Taylor. I think you should bet Jonathan Taylor for Offensive Player of the Year. He's only minus 350 right now. That thing is cooked. That is done and dusted unless he gets injured and misses like a month of time. Like, send a thank you note to Jackson Smith and Jigba, the only other guy that's even shorter than 20-1 right now. And look, JSN has been awesome. JSN has not been Jonathan Taylor. It's not even close. And we know that we're going to do the thing where maybe this is the year a running back wins MVP, and then it's not. It never is. It's not going to be. But even if it wasn't, that's who we give OPOY to. So minus 350 seems crazy to me. You're basically the only way he loses that at this point, given the numbers he's putting up, is a significant injury. I don't know how you price an injury risk. Running backs are always a risk, but if you told me, put it this way, if you told me Taylor misses 1 game and that's it the rest of the season, off the top of my head, like, I'm making him at least minus 1,000. So we talked about like the favorites to make the playoffs and all those short odds. If you're a short odds better, minus 350, or look, maybe you bet minus 350 on whatever you're going to win, and then put the whatever you're going to win as your Jonathan Taylor MVP bet. You're like funding your MVP bet with your OPOY bet, and you at least aren't losing that way. I'm not telling you to bet him MVP. I'm never going to tell you to bet a running back for MVP. I'm going to tell you to bet him for OPOY. I think minus 350 is insanely short for what it should be.
Yeah, use your stake for something good. I honestly might, there might be some other places to take a look at that in terms of OPOY to see if there's some better odds. But I like where you're thinking there. All right, let's keep going here. Jets win 27-20 as 2-point dogs on close over the Browns. Total over 37.5. Garrett Wilson, knee injury, something to look for the Jets. I think the line here was something to talk about. Jets were minus 2.5. Then the trade deadline happens. Then Cleveland goes to 2.5, and the Jets end up winning anyway. Holy mackerel. Justin Fields throws for 54 yards with 6 completions, and the Jets end up winning this game. Just absolutely ridiculous. This is from ESPN. Since 1950, teams 225-0 when holding opponents 175 yards or less and committing 0 turnovers. The Browns lost this game to the Jets, breaking that number. All right. Saints-Panthers. Saints win the game, beating the Panthers 17-7. Cover as 5.5-point dogs. Total goes under 37.5. Carolina Panthers lose their 11th consecutive game as the betting favorite, the longest streak since the merger. September of 2021 was the last time they won and covered or won as a favorite. Carolina's pass defense just really let them down here, man. Like, allowed 8.9 yards per attempt, 3 20-plus yard catches downfield, all where New Orleans went 0 for 2 in the red zone. Like, New Orleans didn't even convert anything, and they didn't need to because Carolina put up 7 points. The one thing that's interesting with New Orleans, second easiest remaining strength of schedule. Like, we're not talking about the playoffs. I think we're more just talking about, like, if you get some plus numbers, it could be intriguing. But Tennessee, Carolina, the Jets, and Miami still on their schedule. Some playoff teams would die for that. The Saints are 1-9 against the first quarter spread this year. Worst mark in the NFL, being outscored 82-19. So we will see if that continues, but that is absolutely horrible. All right, Detroit wins 44-22. Cover 8.5 minus on the road. Total goes over 44.5. 2 injuries in this game. Terrion Arnold with a concussion, and Chris Rodriguez left, and I believe maybe came back with a shoulder, but something to look for there. The streak that just continues with Detroit, which is stupid, is Campbell and Goff now won and covered 13 straight off of a loss. So basically, Detroit doesn't lose back-to-back games, haven't done it since November of 2022 in that spot. That streak of 13 straight, longest for any team in the last 30 years off of a loss. And then for the Commanders, boy, if you looked at them at the end of the NFC Championship game last year and said they're a good fade candidate, you did well. They've lost 4 straight by at least 21 points. First team to do that in 23 years. Everything just seems to be falling apart for Washington at this point. And then lastly, Seattle wins 44-22 as well. Cover -7.5 at home. Total goes over 44.5. October 22nd of 2023 is the last time before today Seattle had won and covered consecutive home games. It had been a long time. I believe they were 5-12 against the spread at home. They exercised some demons because they dominated this one. Sam Darnold, as we had talked about, the MVP, but in the first half this year, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks, 75% completion percentage, 11.1 yards per attempt downfield, just 2 sacks and 22 20-plus yard completions, tied for most in the NFL. So he is really allowing Seattle to get into games easily, not making mistakes, not taking sacks, just really making it easy on them. So that is today's slate. Let's go into Monday Night Football. Oh, this is going to be awesome. I cannot wait. So Packers and Eagles. Packers, last time I looked, and you can correct me, what is it, 2.5? And what's the total? Are you looking at it yourself right now?
Yeah, 2.5, and the total is at 45 at most books.
All right. Well, I mean, to me, every Green Bay game is massive. I mean, they have the 5th toughest strength of schedule going forward. I mean, their easiest game is a Giants game, but they've got Philly, Denver, Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota, and Baltimore. So, based off the fact they haven't looked their best lately, fine. But they also really have a tough schedule. So to me, this one, probably more on Green Bay to show us who they are versus Philly. I mean, Philly never shows us something good. So why would they start now? Like, it just, you know what I mean? Like, to me, an egg from Green Bay would go much further than an egg from Philly. I think an egg from Philly, people would show excuses. They would show up another day. I think an egg from Green Bay, we would really start to dissect that.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, if you look kind of big picture, the Packers have losses to the Browns and Panthers. Well, look at what the Browns and Panthers did today. Like, that should not make us feel great about what they did today, about what the Packers are for the season. I think that the Eagles, it's not necessarily that the goose egg or whatever would betray them. I think there's just a lot to learn about the Eagles. They're coming out of the bye week here. And if we're being fair, and I should be fair, I've picked on the Eagles a lot this season. That offense, Kevin Patullo, the play call, they started to find a few answers. They started to do some under center play action. They started to mix things up in ways that they hadn't early in the season. And now you have a whole extra week to kind of self-scout a little bit. The Packers are very vulnerable middle of the field. That's never been a Jalen Hurts thing, but the Eagles are actually number 1 EPA per play on middle of the field. They're just second least attacking there, but under center play action has not really been a Jalen Hurts thing either. Maybe they'll find something there. I do think in this particular matchup, I feel like it's going to be a lower scoring game. I would lean under, especially first half. I think Packers first half under, they're 7-1 to this season. So the Packers allow the fewest explosives in the league, and they're one of the best defending deep passes in the league. The Eagles don't pass a lot, we know, but they are top. They're the number 1 most deep passes per pass play, and they're top 3 EPA per play. So they don't often pass, but when they do, they take big shots down the field. And if Green Bay can get some pressure with Micah Parsons and everyone, if they can take away those big plays, I think we kind of get, as fun, as big of a game as it is, maybe more of a sloggy sort of game with just both teams want to run the ball here. We're going to get a lot of Josh Jacobs. We're going to get a lot of Saquon Barkley. We, unfortunately, are not going to get any Tucker Kraft, who I think in this matchup is a pretty big deal. We talked about teams going heavy. Packers, 5th most, 12 personnel. They can't because Tucker Kraft is gone. You get Luke Musgrave, who I know you're going to talk about in a second, but he's the guy that helps them play versatile. He's the guy that helps set up their elite play action. Philly is vulnerable to play action. He also can block a little bit, and the Eagles are not great pressuring, but the Packers are number 1 EPA per play when they do not get blitzed. So what's the pressure look like? Well, we don't really know because during the time off for the Eagles, they traded for Jalen Phillips, who's supposed to be the new pressure guy. They might now have Nolan Smith back, who's a big pressure guy. They traded for Jair Alexander, who's going to be out in this game, his old team, but they got Michael Carter, so new 2 cornerbacks as well. So I think just big picture, as exciting as this game is, it feels to me like a game that we mostly should be watching and learning from. Like, not every game. Look, I'm the guy who puts in like 40 bets every week into the Action app for Sunday, right? I'm not sitting out a lot of games. I have a bet for you here in a second. But to me, this is not a game you should feel very confident about a side or a total. We're going to learn a lot here. And I think you're right. Green Bay has more to lose. I think we have more to learn about Philly. I think there's a lot to learn about how their offense is slowly coming together and what does the defense look like now, because by the numbers, they say Green Bay should run and Philadelphia will struggle to run. But I don't really know that we believe that that's what's going to happen. And I will say, too, prepping for this game today, this is how you know you're a good sports analyst. I Googled, when does Toyotathon start? Because guess what, Evan? Not for another week. So Jordan Love's not an MVP yet for one more week, unless maybe he's going to kickstart the Toyotathon. Wouldn't it be great if it was like Jordan Love, huge Monday night game, and then immediately when the game ends, there's Jordan Love like launching Toyotathon as like, you know, the post Super Bowl Disney commercial, and Jordan Love's like, I'm going to Toyotathon. Like, it's not yet though. So maybe we're a week early. It's an exciting game. I just don't know what's going to happen in it. So do you have a read on the game, and do you have a bet on the game?
I think Toyotathon's just waiting on Love to have a good game, and then they're going to bring it out the next day. That would be the smart thing to do. If you're going to make me pick a side here, I'm probably going to lean Philly. I'd like the points in any situation with the Eagles. They've played the underdog role well lately, but I also just think Tucker Kraft loses a big part of Green Bay's offense, like a part of the offense that they really rely on. And I think in any big game, I still don't know how much I super rely on Jordan Love. And they're my Super Bowl pick from the preseason because I loved everything. That I thought they were the most balanced team, and I thought they could really fight with Philly. And I thought they would win the division. I think some of the injuries, and again, they got Micah Parsons after I said I wanted Green Bay to win the Super Bowl. Like, everything felt like it was kind of going in order, but I kind of like the points with Philly here. I think Green Bay is going to take a tiny bit of time to try to figure out what Musgrave is in the offense. Like, some of the quotes are a little bit funny, but I think there's some motivation behind them. Like, the quotes from Love were that Musgrave is a key offensive weapon. Stenovich, who's the offensive coordinator, said Musgrave is a downfield threat. Like, I just think they're trying to do anything they can to pump up. I mean, we're talking about Golden and Wicks and Reed. Like, there's so much in and out of what Green Bay is trying to get back and trying to figure out week to week that I think it's going to take some time. So in terms of the bets themselves, that's probably the way I would attack it. In terms of value, I tracked a few bets in this game. I took Hurts and Saquon to both score touchdowns. Like, how many weeks do you get both guys at plus money to score touchdowns in this game, where if one guy hits, you end up making money? That's not a situation in a rush attack with Philly you get often. So those were bets I made. I took Goddard over 29.5 rush per receive. It was 29.5 at a few books. I built it together because he has the opportunity to rush. I know Philly doesn't throw much, but I think he's going to have a decent part of this game, especially if I feel like it's going to be a little bit back and forth. But the bet I have here is Musgrave. I think it offers value at DraftKings at plus 360. Again, I think they're going to narrative it and try to give him the ball to make him feel comfortable in the offense. I was trying to get myself to put a bet in on John Fitzpatrick. He's going to get some routes in the game, but I just don't think I honestly, 10 to 1, 11 to 1. I just don't think it's enough. I think Musgrave's the guy here. So I think a touchdown at that price is worth it.
Yeah, I think Fitzpatrick becomes like the Payne Durham bet. We talked about that with the Bucs playing multiple tight ends. He's the multiple tight ends. If he's going to be on the field, he's going to have a shot to score. I looked at the tight end for a touchdown. I've been hitting these Monday night touchdowns. So if you want another one, I looked at Philly's tight end. I think Dallas Goedert plus 235. Packers allow a lot of tight end touchdowns. He's got 7 in 7 games. My favorite bet in this game is Saquon Barkley. Not as a runner, but as a receiver. I don't mind the touchdown angle. I like that, playing both of those. I'm going to take him as a receiver over 2.5 receptions. It's even odds. He's hit that over in 5 of 8 games. And I'll be honest, I often play running back receptions against the Packers. The way they defend invites running back receptions. They allow the 4th most receptions per game to running back. They play a lot of zone, and that leaves open underneath. In the last 14 games, they've allowed a running back to have at least 4 catches. 4, and we only need 3. They've allowed at least 4 in half of those games, including they have 4+ receptions to a running back. In those games, they have an 11, 12, and 14 receptions game to opposing running backs. Not necessarily just one guy, but multiple guys. Like first game of the year, I think Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 catches in that game against the Packers. Just these quick little dump offs. And it's not really Hurts's go-to game, but Saquon's receiving is up. 2.1 receptions a game last year, 3.0 this year. That's a full reception higher, and it's basically 50% higher. He's had 4 or more in half the games. So we're playing the receptions escalator, 4 more receptions plus 215 at DraftKings. And if you get 4 catches, the yards aren't always there. His receiving yards line is like 14 or something. I don't want that. Sometimes he has like 4 catches for 9 yards. It's just not happening. But it's Saquon. Maybe hits a long one. So I'm going to play 40 yards receiving, not rushing, 40 yards receiving. He's done that 5 times since the start of last November. So about a quarter of the time, it's plus 650. So if we get 4 catches, maybe he takes a little bit, bursts on a long one. We get like a 25 in there and get our way to 40. So Saquon over 2.5 catches, even odds, 4 catches at just over 2-1, 40 yards receiving or more, plus 650. And otherwise, I'm going to mostly sit this one out and just watch a really fun game.
Yeah, hopefully he gets a long reception there for a touchdown. We all end up at the window. So if you want to tell some of these Monday Night Football bets, make sure to look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/betnow, BETNOW, bet now. You can also find those quick slips in the live YouTube chat if you're still hanging out with us. All right, Brandon, I think we've teased them enough. What are your hot read plays for next week in week 11?
Yeah, first hot read, we are doubling down on what was our look ahead. Give me the Panthers at the Falcons, plus 3.5. I think there is one stray plus 4 out there if you can grab it. And I'm going to play the money line as well, plus 175 for a Carolina outright win. This is now 4 straight weeks I'm playing a money line in a Panthers game. It's a weird obsession, Evan. What's happening with me? But look, we had Sunday mapped out to perfection. We had the Colts over the Falcons. Colts ran all over them just as expected. And then we had Carolina struggling and losing to the Saints. And that is what happened. Carolina is better scripted as an underdog than as the favorite. What do they want to do? Run the ball, stop the run, shorten the game. You don't want to do that when you're the favorite, but it works great against the Packers in that game. And it worked great against Atlanta. The Panthers beat Atlanta 30-0 this season, like 2 months ago. And now they're more than a field goal underdog in this game. Despite that, they have the better record, and they're the supposed playoff team, or at least contender here. In that game, they shut down Atlanta's run pretty well. They ran the ball 30 times, and they let Atlanta beat itself, which is the thing that the Falcons have gotten really, really good at this season. So Panthers, top 10 run offense by DVOA, bottom 10 run defense for Atlanta. I just think it sets up well. In the last 2 decades, road underdogs of between 3 to 7 points, 56.4% ATS in division games. That's almost 400 games. That is a very strong sample and a very strong, almost 10% ROI there. And all that said, why did we bet against Atlanta on the look ahead? They were in Berlin today. They started the day out. They're coming back without rest, and the spot got worse for them. They played overtime in Germany, and they got run all over the place by Jonathan Taylor. And now this exhausted team comes home, and the trend I love, teams with no bye week after international games have been tied or trailing 16 out of the 18 fourth quarters all time in that spot. Now the Falcons are even more tired than we thought because they come back off an overtime game. And if the Panthers are in it late, I think they'll have a chance to steal. So Panthers, 3.5, 4 if you can grab it, and a little bit on plus 175 on the money line. Plus 175. I basically make this a coin flip by my numbers. So I'll happily take a plus 175 shot at that anytime.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look. I'm just curious myself, like how many times a team loses 30-0, loses by 28 plus, and is an underdog in the next meeting. Obviously there's a lot going into that, but pretty dominating. So I'll probably put that in the primer this week. All right, you got one more here. What are you doing?
One more. Chiefs, Broncos. Give me the under. Under 44.5. Kind of a weird hot rate because neither one of those teams played today. And usually we're reading what just happened. The Chiefs were on a bye week. The Broncos arguably barely played this week. We wish they hadn't played. We had to watch it on Thursday night, 10-7. That'll be fine for under if we get something like that. I think Denver continues to be one of the most fraudulent teams in the league. In that win, 220 yards for the winning team, Denver. Under 4 yards of play, 37% success rate. Bo Nix was dreadful in that game. Minus 0.3 EPA per play. They had no business winning that game. That's the offense. And the Chiefs defense is going to be fine holding up against them. But of course, they do play defense because in that game that they did win, they held the Raiders to 188 yards and just barely 3 yards of play and 32% success rate. And I think in this game, Pat Surtain is not as big of a loss as other matchups because there's really not that outside receiver the Chiefs need to have matched up against you. Rashee Rice is great, but that's not his game. In Denver games, if you take out Dallas, who we know is an outlier, they're averaging under 38 points per game in Denver games on the season. They've been an unders team, and they've been an unders team against the Chiefs. Last year, the Chiefs had their 2 lowest scoring games of the season against Denver. Now look, one of those is fake. It was week 18. So that doesn't really count as 38-0, but they scored 16 in the other one. And their low scoring game the previous season was against Denver, in Denver. 9 points for Mahomes. And by the way, 9 points against Denver, who like a month earlier gave up 70 to the Dolphins. That same defense found answers and held Patrick Mahomes to 9 points. So in the last 4 games, Chiefs Broncos played the last 2 years, they're averaging 32 points a game total. 38, 33, 30, and 27. We said the week 18 game didn't count. That's bringing the average up. The other games are all lower than that one. So I think this is under all the way. Both teams want to control the clock. That is what they want. I think this is a very like first game of the playoff weekend feel game where it's just like the clock's just ticking away and there's not a lot happening, but it's close and it feels like a big deal. Denver 7-3 to the under, tops in the league for the season. The Chiefs are 6-3 to the under, just behind them. Both teams are top 5 first and second half to the under. These are under teams. Under 44.5, 44 down to 40. Every one of those numbers is a key number. So you want the value while it's there. It's already 43.5 at some books. I think it's going to keep moving that way. So I'm going to take the under. Broncos, Chiefs, and please, for the love of God, Patrick Mahomes, will you please beat the Broncos too? Just keep it under 44.5 so we can cash our under.
Yeah, I think both teams are going to be scared to make mistakes. A lot of running. Should be running the clock a lot. So I like the angle there. All right, that'll do it here on the Action Hour podcast for our Week 10 NFL recap episode presented by DraftKings. Give us a like on the YouTube video before you take off. We really appreciate it. Now go to actionhour.com/pro and use the promo code POD20 for $20 off a year of Action Pro. If you haven't yet, check out our new AI quick slip bot on X. Just tag Playbook at Playbook. Tell it to grab whatever bets you're looking for, and it'll create a quick slip link for you in a matter of seconds. We'll be back for Action Island before Monday night's games right here on Action Network's YouTube page, as well as more NFL bets from Brandon, the 6-pack from Raybon and Stuckey, anytime touchdowns, and more on the podcast feed next week. Thank you for listening, and good luck with all your bets. Enjoy the day, everybody.